All right, welcome everybody. My name is Michael, and I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker tonight, Madeleine. Madeleine began her academic career at St. Barbara City College, where she majored in biological sciences. At SBCC, she served as president as SBCC Biology Club and secretary for the Pre-Med Club, and worked as a math and biology tutor. In 2019, Madeleine transferred to the University of California, Los Angeles, and graduated summa cum laude with a degree in molecular, cell, and developmental biology with a minor in genetics and society. After graduating, she took 2 gap years where she worked at Mohs Surgery Histology as a surgery histology technician and served on the PreMedCC leadership team. She is now a first-year medical student at the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry, and her special interests include medical humanities, gastroenterology, decreasing disparities in medical education, and disparities in medical education. She's passionate about helping non-traditional pre-medical students achieve their goals of a career in medicine and is honored to work with PreMedCC. Welcome back, Madeleine.
Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you for everyone joining us today. It's so much fun to come back here and talk and meet, other pre-med students, especially those who started off at a CC, because I know how tricky it is at the beginning and how confusing it can be. I remember sitting in, your guys' shoes and being concerned, like, oh, will I be able to transfer? Am I going to be able to get into medical school if I started off at a community college? So I'm just so happy to be able to come here and tell you guys that, yes, absolutely, you definitely can. So I have some slides I'm going to share with you guys, just a little bit about my story. I have a little bit of tips in there too for the MCAT. But then if you have any questions at all, please put them in the Q&A. I really want to spend a lot of time answering your guys' questions. And, if you have any questions about my journey, or if you have any specific questions about, where you're at and want to know if I have any advice or if anyone, our team members have advice, then yeah, please feel free to put them in there. So I'm going to start screen sharing. Okay. Does that look good? We able to see everything? Perfect. Okay. So let me go to share. Oh, that is not what I'm supposed to do. Here we go. Okay, so this is just a little brief little presentation. So just from City College to White Coat, and here's a little bit about how I did it and how you can do it too. So who am I? I am a second-year student at Rochester, at University of Rochester in upstate New York. So I think I updated this. This is a picture of me during my white coat ceremony. And then I am also a former CC student, as was said before.
It's not loading.
It's not loading? Oh, let's see. Oh, I see. Okay. It says that it's paused down here. Might have been because I went full screen. And now it's screen sharing again?
Yep.
Okay, let's see. How's that? Nope. Seems as soon as I go full screen, it decides that it doesn't want to work for us. Huh.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, that was that. And then here's the who am I? So again, a second-year medical student at University of Rochester in upstate New York. I'm a former CC student, as was said before. I went to Santa Barbara City College, and then I transferred to UCLA where I got my bachelor's degree, and I graduated in 2021. And then I did work as a Mohs surgery histology technician in dermatology surgery for 2 years. And then I was also the PreMedCC president during that time, or at least for one of those years. And then I got married this summer. So there's a picture of that. And we had a bird crash our wedding, which was very fun. And then also I'm a future doctor. And then I included down here a little what I want to be when I grow up. And that was from when I was in kindergarten. So I wanted to be a doctor of babies. And then just a little bit about my academic journey, a little in more detail. So, I wanted to be a doctor since I was a kid, but there was a little bit of bumps along the way, which happens for a lot of people. So I actually started off my academic career at Ventura College, and I was there for 3 years, and I was undecided at first, and then I decided I wanted to become a liberal arts major. just because that was what I thought was going to be able to allow me to have a little bit more flexibility in the classes I was taking. And then when I first started, I really was not the best student. So I was actually on academic probation for a little bit of time, which I'm just sharing because I feel like it's important for everyone to know that it's okay if sometimes there's some setbacks, and that happens to everyone, and it's okay, and you can still get to medical school with that. Then I did transfer to Santa Barbara City College in 2017, and I was a biology for transfer major. So that's where I completed my IGETC, transfer prerequisites, and then a lot of my medical school prerequisites. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about that later. Then after that, transferred to University of California, Los Angeles. So I was at UCLA for 2 years, where I majored in molecular cell and developmental biology, and I was a minor in society and genetics. And then I graduated summa cum laude in 2021. So again, just kind of showing that like you can start off on academic probation and still, all med schools care about is that upward trend. So it works out. And then right now I'm currently at the University of Rochester School of Medicine. So I started in 2023 and I'm currently in my second year. So I'm doing a little bit of clinical research work, and then my interests change all the time. This is something that you'll hear from medical school, medical students. So right now, I know earlier I said maybe GI, I'm interested in GI, but now I'm thinking internal medicine or pediatrics. So it just kind of changes depending on what we're learning about. And I'm still looking for that perfect fit, but that's totally normal and, kind of to be expected for medical students because we're seeing so many different things. Okay. So community college, like I was saying before, I actually did take most of my pre-med requirements at a community college. So I took biology there, chemistry, physics, math, organic chemistry, English, sociology, psychology, all of those classes I did take at the community college level. The only major pre-med requirement that I didn't, or pre-med requirements that I didn't take at community college were biochemistry and genetics, because they just weren't offered at my school. Those are typically upper division courses for university. And then 2 of my 3 letters of recommendations came from professors from my community college. So for medical school, you typically need at least 3 letters of recommendation. And I just was so worried. I was thinking, oh, I need some UCLA letters. But in reality, my CC professors got to know me the best, especially the ones that I was tutoring for and working with. So that's totally fine. And yeah, just again, you 100% you can attend a community college and get into medical school. I feel like if you guys are coming to PreMedCC events, you've heard this from deans of admissions, but it's just nice to hear that it's definitely doable. So I know I'm not sure where everyone is in the process right now, but I remember when I was at community college, I was really worried about transferring. This was a big concern of mine. And I think that's a pretty common thing that we're all worried about at that level. So some of the common concerns that people have are switching over from a semester system to a quarter system. A lot of the UCs, especially if you're in California, you'll know that most of them are semester systems, or sorry, quarter systems. So it's a little bit more quick than at the community college where they're typically semester systems. Curved grades was something I was really scared about. Most science classes do have a curve, but it's never meant to hurt you. That's also something that happens in medical school, at least in my medical school. We do have a curve, but the curve is always, if there's typically like a set pass point, but then if the average ends up being below that, then your curve will go down. And that's typically the same thing as what you see at a university level now. So it's not, if the average is a 97%, then you have to get, to pass with a C at a 70%, they're not going to push it up to an 80%, if that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, you can put them in the chat because I might not have explained that too well. Larger classes. So the classes at City College are typically a lot smaller, but then the upper division classes, once you transfer, are typically a pretty good size. So it's about 100 people in each class. And yeah, so let's see. So a little bit about pre-med activities. There's some things that you do want to be emphasizing in your application. So some of them are going to be clinical experiences. You could do that through scribing. You could do EMT work. You could do something like I did, which was the Mohs histotech work, which is a little bit different than most pre-med activities. For that, I was working more in a lab technician type role, but I was working directly with surgeons. So the surgeons would come in and I would be the point of contact and speaking with them. And that just really helped me learn how to speak to professional physicians and how to work in that clinical environment, even though I wasn't directly working with patients. But there's a lot of different clinical experiences and types of things you can do. I know PreMedCC has a lot of videos on all of those clinical experiences that you can get in some of the different and maybe roles that you might not have thought about. So I would definitely recommend checking those out. Then as for research experiences, I think this is something that can be a little bit challenging as a community college student, but that's probably changing as from when I was dealing with this way back, in 2020. So for research experiences, you can think of like the traditional academic, working in a wet lab research experiences, but then there's also ones that are maybe a little bit different. You can do clinical research at hospitals. A lot of people during their gap years will do clinical research technician type jobs, and that allows you to work with patients and get research experience at the same time. You can also do something I didn't even realize was that if you are involved in any majors or minors that have a capstone project, you can include that as a research experience, because even if it's more of a doing more of like reviews and looking over prior research and putting into your own words and creating this entire capstone project with that is considered a research experience. So that's something that you can include on your application. Work experiences. When I was still undecided at Ventura College, I worked as a paraprofessional in elementary school. So I was working with, little kids one-on-one in special education classrooms. And that was something that I put on my med school application. And it was a work experience and it wasn't technically clinical, but med schools really just want to see who you are as a person, some of the activities that you've been involved in, even if they're not directly related to medicine, just because it tells your story. Volunteering, this is always a big one. You can volunteer at hospitals, you can volunteer at soup kitchens, you can volunteer working with people, boys and girls clubs, all of those different, just getting involved with your community and just showing that you care. It doesn't have to necessarily be clinical, but just showing that you are somebody who wants to make a difference and wants to help out in any way. And it's not just about getting these, I did this specific volunteer experience that looks good because it shows that I'm interested in medicine. Just to show that you're interested in your community as a whole also really does make a difference. And then I just wanted to put in a little studying for the MCAT thing. So something from community college, like I said earlier before, I took most of my prerequisites there. So saving your notes from your pre-medical course requirements, even if you took them at a CC or if you took them at a grad university, just saving those notes and having them on file will really help you when you're studying for the MCAT, because a lot of that material is going to come back up again. I think, deciding if you want to take gap years is really important. This was something I decided to take gap years because I wanted to get a little bit more clinical experience. When I was at UCLA, a lot of that was during COVID, so it was difficult to get in-person clinical experience during that time. Things have changed now. So, but yeah, deciding if you want to take a gap year is really important because it also helps you kind of plan when you want to take that MCAT. So really, you're going to have to set aside a lot of time for studying for the MCAT. If you're studying while you're still in school, you want to give yourself about 6 months of reviewing content and really working on that. If you're studying full time over a summer, giving yourself 3 months, just an entire summer to focus on studying for the MCAT is also a really good idea. Using your time wisely. That was something I've talked about before in some of my studying for the MCAT workshops, that I spent a lot of time on content review and not that much time on practice questions. So I think working, kind of finding what works for you is important. And for me, I realized that really the practice questions are where I learned the best. And that's something that I even think about now in medical school, is trying to expose myself to as many practice questions as possible. And again, that goes right into the next bullet point, which is those practice questions and practice exams are really, really key to success on the MCAT. So there's free resources available, Jack Weston. There's also all of these different practice exams, Kaplan, Blueprint, Princeton Review, and then the AAMC resources are, of course, by and far the best resources. They're the closest to the actual exam. So I like to save those for last. And then also just to really look throughout the problems that you got wrong and really look critically and see, okay, what could I have done to improve this? And why did I miss this question? And what should I do next time? And I think that's all I have. I'm so sorry. This is a little shorter on the presentation front, but I wanted to give you guys a lot of opportunities to ask questions. So I'm going to close this now and stop sharing my screen. And let's see, I'm going to jump into the Q&A. And then our first question is, Jubin, do you want me to go through these or?
It's up to you, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. How do you feel, Michael? Do you want to maybe take turns going through them?
It's totally your preference.
Okay, we can go back and forth. I'll start with the first one because I started reading it. But yeah. Sorry. Actually, I'm gonna grab some water really quickly. This was a lot of talking. So I will be right back and then we'll start going into the questions. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so the first question, how did you overcome being a bad student? That's a really good question. And it's tough. I don't know if there's one answer. I think for me, I was really young when I started CC. I graduated high school at 17, and I think I was just a little bit unsure what I wanted to do, and what direction I wanted to go into. So I think for me, at least, a lot of it was finding kind of that drive. And once I decided that I wanted to go pre-med, everything started kind of falling in line because then I really had to work on that. So I think also finding good study skills and being able to, I just wasn't sure how to study for classes at that time as well. I was a little bit confused about the entire process. So it was about finding resources, talking to my professors, talking to my classmates, seeing what they were doing that was helping them, and just kind of coming up with a strategy to really stay focused. And then also to have a goal in mind and something that I was really working towards helped a lot.
A question we have here is, what personal trait do you feel like is most sought out by medical schools? But I'd like to add on to that, if you could elaborate on some of the soft skills that medical schools look for.
Yeah, definitely. So I think every school is a little bit different. I know that the schools that I was applying to, let's see, I think every school is looking for something different. So some schools are really looking for highly research-driven people, and that can be a personal trait to show being inquisitory, to show curiosity, to show, these also to show like passion, maybe in specific research areas. They're looking for that. Some schools are really looking for compassion. I feel like a lot of the schools that I was the most interested in were the ones that were looking for really empathetic students who, again, were going out into their community, working in different ways, finding a way to make a difference in people's life. And again, maybe not necessarily just in medicine, but just showing passion and caring. So, once you get to the point where you're applying to medical school, you're going to realize that some of them are looking for different things. Some people are looking for really, really strong leadership skills, for people that, go out and create their own organizations. And if they see, a gap that needs to be filled, they go out and they create that. So again, every school is a little bit different. But as for soft skills, I do think that's something that all of the medical schools are looking for. And ways that you can show that is, responsibility, being, that's something that's going to come through in your letters. So even before you're starting to apply, you're going to these classes and these are the places that you're going to be asking for letters of recommendation from. You're showing up to your job and this is, maybe you're going to be asking for a letter of recommendation from a PI in research or from your supervisor at your scribing job. So just to show schools are really looking for accountability, they're looking for professionalism, they're looking for, just responsibility in general. So these are things that you can be starting while you're still in school and showing, the people that you're going to be asking letters from that you're a professional, responsible person.
Did all of your prerequisites transfer and did you have to repeat any classes?
Yeah, so I actually all of my pre not all of my prerequisites transferred. Trying to think. So when it came to transferring to university itself, I was over 60 units for transferring to CC. So not everything technically did transfer over to UCLA. All of the classes that I needed for my major did transfer, and that wasn't a problem. They look through it and they really make sure that all of those classes transfer. But then once you're applying to medical school, they're going to have access to all of your records. So, maybe say my sociology class from City College didn't transfer for my degree requirements at UCLA, like I wouldn't get credits for that. But then when it came to medical school, they had access to all of those records. They don't care about how many units you take anywhere. So then they could see that I had taken a sociology class, if that makes sense.
And also the other thing is you got to be careful too, is that they're not so in California, and I don't know if it's the same in any other state. Um, they cannot make you retake a class if you take it, like, so if you take an organic chemistry, they can't make you retake it at the UC or CSU, and it's because the state has paid for you to go to school at a community college. They're not going to pay for that same class. Now, most of you that are going to transfer, you're going to go over the 60 units. They're only going to take I think it's 60 semester, 90 quarter. And you got to figure out the conversion factor, which is a 1.5. So they will give you, so like, let's say if you've taken 60 units and then your organic chemistry is 70 units, they're going to give you 60 units towards graduation or 90 units towards graduation. You're not going to repeat organic chemistry, but you're going to have to fill, but there's plenty of classes that you could fill in order to graduate. So you're not going to be repeating the same class,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Most people that transfer are gonna, sorry, sorry. So yeah, you're not going to be able to do that. So you're not going to be able to, you're not going to repeat the same class. So
Yeah. Like Jiban was saying, they don't want to have to pay twice for that. And then also, I think all of my friends who transferred at the same time, we all had over the amount of units when we transferred, and it's not a problem. They're not going to have to, you're not going to have to retake it. And then also, it's a good opportunity if you do need more units to graduate, to take a minor, something that you're interested in. So
you want to go to the next question?
I can read it. So do medical schools accept online coursework? SBCC has an online physics sequence, and I'm wondering if taking physics online over the summer will hurt my application. I did that. So I took physics online over the summer. I also took chemistry at SBCC online over the summer. I didn't take the full physics. I just took the last course the summer before I transferred to UCLA, and it was completely fine. Medical school accepted all of my coursework. Now, that was also before COVID. So it was definitely not a problem. And then also UCLA took it, no problem.
Sorry, so it's 70 semester units, 105, um, and I found it online. Somebody posted in there too. So thank you.
Perfect. I will say one caveat for the taking classes over the summer. If you can take them in person, that's definitely going to be looked better, more accepted, especially for a class like physics or chemistry where there's a lab component. It is important to get those lab components, especially for your transferring. But then also for medical schools, they don't always need labs, but for the most part, they would. And if you're specifically interested in certain schools, I would look more into that.
Yeah, and I think one of the other thing is too is since COVID, some classes have gone online. And I even think like some of the campuses don't even post if the class is online or in person. So just just saying.
Mhm.
Uh, but if online is easier for you, take it online or in person, take. But I don't know if they do labs anymore online. I think it was done it was a COVID thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, especially if you're going to the school and you're involved and you can go in and ask, that might be something to look into. But for certain classes like physics, chemistry, you might want to be in person for those ones, or at least for the lab component. But yeah.
All right. Next question is about the MCAT. When did you take your MCAT and why? And it's asked by someone who said that they were raised in Mexico. So just in general, do you have any advice for people who aren't raised in America?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is actually something that was a little bit confusing to me when I was a city college student. I didn't realize that a lot of people at university typically take the MCAT in between their second and third years. So just because most of the requirements that you need, the subjects you'll need for the MCAT are going to be in those first 2 years. So technically, I could have taken the MCAT right after transfer or in between transferring from a city college to community or to university. I did not do that, but I wanted to give myself a little bit more time, and I knew that I was planning on taking gap years, so it was okay. But when you're applying to medical school, you'll want to take the MCAT at least, you'll want to have your score back before you're applying to schools. So the MCAT, if you give yourself the entire summer to study for it, you'll and then take the MCAT at the end of the summer. You kind of want to do that in between your junior and your senior year because then you're able to apply to medical school. The medical school application cycle takes about a full year. So if you do that between your junior and senior year, you'll have your score. You can apply at the end of the summer to medical school. Then you'll have the entire application cycle, and then you'll start medical school right after you graduate. Now, if you're okay with taking gap years, then you can push it back and take it the after you graduate university, you'll just know that you need to take gap years, and that's what I ended up doing. Um, but it's different for everyone. So I can put in a little bit more information when I send the slides over, and we're going to upload those just with a little bit more information about the MCAT timeline itself. But that is something that you'll want to keep in mind. And then as for applying as an international student, I think that's a really interesting point. I would ask if you feel like you're struggling in any sections. I know that for a lot of my friends that were international students, that English wasn't their first language, that cars could be really difficult. So I would definitely recommend looking at the Jack Weston passages and making sure that you're getting a lot of practice on cars, because if that's a problem, but if that's not a problem for you, then that's also something that you don't really have to consider. But Jack Weston is great. It's free. So for everyone, I really think it's a good resource.
Another question about your application. Do you feel like your unique clinical experience working in histology affected or positively contributed to your application? And would you recommend similar experiences?
That's a great question. At the time, I thought it was going to be a problem, honestly. But now that I'm in medical school, pathology is a really, at least at our school, histology and pathology are really integrated into the curriculum. So I definitely feel like I have a little bit of a leg up when it comes to that. Even just today, we were working with microscopes, and a lot of my classmates were joking. They said, I haven't used a microscope since, middle school. I don't know what I'm doing with this. And I was able to kind of come in, and I'd gotten all that histotech working with a microscope experience. I do think it stood out, and I think it's been something that as I've been going through school, I've been able to talk with pathologists, been able to understand histology in a way, even not just with pathologists, but with people that are looking at that at the slides and be able to communicate with them and kind of know a little bit of the inside scoop. I do think it's good to have patient experience and to show that you're able and confident working with patients, working with people. And I did have some free volunteer. I volunteered at a free clinic, so I was able to get a little bit of patient experience that way. Working as an EMT is also really good. But I do think that med schools are looking for interesting, interesting experiences and things that are a little bit unique. So again, we have a lot of resources. PreMedCC has a lot of videos on some of those, kind of less known medical experiences and clinical experiences that you can get. that can strengthen your application. But I definitely liked working as a histotech, and I thought it was a really fun way to meet a lot of surgeons. It was a fun way to get involved with science. And it also, in medical school, it's definitely served me pretty well. And I know at least if you're in California, you can work as a histotech without a histology technician license. So that was part of why I decided to do it, because I didn't have enough time to do like an MA licensure.
Um, Another question, are certain extracurriculars way differently than others?
I think to an extent, I know that a lot of times they're looking for leadership experiences. And I think also the amount of time that you're putting into some of these experiences and extracurriculars is going to make them consider them differently. When you're applying to medical school itself, they give you an opportunity to talk about the three most important experiences that you did, the three most important extracurriculars that you were involved in. So they're absolutely going to weigh those differently, because those are the ones that you yourself have marked as being, these are some of the, the things I'm the most proud of and the things I really want to highlight in my application. So those ones will definitely be considered differently. And again, they're looking for you showing that you're making a difference and working, connecting with people. So I don't know if I think leadership level is going to be important. Just being a member of a club probably won't be as weighed as strongly in your application, but being, having a leadership role, being a president, making, growing the club, or, being part of a volunteering and taking on a leadership role, like things like that are going to look pretty good. And especially if you mark them yourself as one of your most important experiences.
How important would you say math is for getting into medical school?
Uh, it's tough. A lot of schools do have math requirements. So I'm just going to preface it with that. A lot of the schools are looking for at least a calculus and a statistics class. Um, every school is different. So again, once you're applying to medical school, you'll have access to the MSAR, which is the medical school application requirements, I think is what it stands for. And that will have information specifically about what every school is looking for. And you'll be able to kind of sort through it all on one website. But if you're interested now, you can also look up the schools that you're interested in and see what the requirements are. For the most part, it's pretty standard. They're looking for basically everything you would need in a biology degree to graduate. So one calculus, typically one statistics course, and then all of the other requirements. I wouldn't say that math is super necessary for medicine. We do have to do a little bit of math in our exams, but even on the MCAT, being comfortable with logarithmic functions, I would say is probably one of the more important skills, just because you have to be able to work with scientific notation and kind of understand, they'll give you a question where everything is in liters, and then all the answers are in milliliters, and just being able to kind of switch back and forth is important. But as for the math itself, in medical school, at least, it's not too emphasized, which can be a little bit frustrating because you take these calculus classes and then you don't actually need any of it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think math only really matters if you need to be able to do well in math and understand it in order to do well in general chemistry. If you decide to be a chemistry major or a major that requires you to have at least year and a half, almost 2 years of calculus and differential equation, then it's going to really be heavily on you. So that just depends on your major. But if not, you could get away. But I think statistics is probably most schools now require statistics. Some require a year of calculus. Um, but um, but in a sense, you're gonna need you need to do well in the class. Uh, but you don't need to be, published in, you know.
Yeah.
in math journals, but you need to do well. And the other part of it too, physics, if you're taking calculus-based physics, you need to be well and you need to be really good in calculus. If you're taking non-calculus based physics, then you probably need to be strong in algebra, but also in order you to be good in calculus, you need to be good in algebra. So it's kind of like it's the circle of life, I guess, or circle of math. So
Yeah. And
math is important, but you don't need to be if you're struggling through math, it's okay. There's a what is it? Sunlight at the end of the tunnel.
yeah, yeah. It's I would say that algebra probably, at least for the MCAT, is important. Again, just being comfortable with like log rules and being able to go through those in your head is helpful. And then also there are math questions on the MCAT. There's physics questions, and the math itself isn't too difficult. But just to feel comfortable with it, algebra is really necessary. And then as for med school, again, algebra level for the most part, you don't really need sometimes, having a basic understanding of calculus will help you with that, especially like Jubin was saying, if you're taking those calculus-based physics classes. But again, a lot of schools don't actually require calculus-based physics classes, so look into the schools itself. But I know I had only taken an algebra. I took calculus, but I also took an algebra based physics class, and that was completely fine.
A more personal question, and I'm not sure if you went over this already, but if you could reiterate what personal experiences or extracurriculars you felt helped you the most in your application.
Yeah, let's see. So I had mentioned before, I worked as a paraprofessional and working in special education classrooms. So I did put that down as one of my most important experiences, and I really felt like that was when I was still undecided. And that was one of the experiences that really pushed me into considering medicine to really, to kind of focus on pursuing medicine, just because I was working with children that had physical disabilities, developmental delays. And I was, meeting a lot of kiddos that had different things going on with them, and I was so interested in it. So that was part of what kind of reignited my passion for medicine. And then also, I think it showed schools who I was. So that was something that was really special for me. Um, and then also I was involved with PreMedCC back when we first started up in, gosh, 2021. Yeah, a while ago. So I put that down because, I wanted people to know that you can go to community college and become a doctor, and it's totally doable. And it was something that I was so scared about. And I had been going through that CC journey. And then finally, there I was getting ready to apply to medical school. And I just wanted to share that with people. And then also working in Mohs was one of my most important experiences because it did teach me a lot about being in a really high energy, fast-paced clinical environment where things are, it's just chaos back there sometimes. And it taught me how to communicate with physicians, to be a part of a team. Um, so it was a really good experience. So I think having volunteer experiences that are important to you, whether that be in your community or in a hospital or whatever it may be. Maybe you really like a sport, volunteering with kids that are doing that sport or just being part of that academic environments, or sorry, physical, I'm dropping the word. But regardless, what I'm trying to say is that find something that you're really passionate about, that you really care about, and then that's what schools are going to see. Those are the experiences that are going to stand out, just because when you have passion for something, people will see that. So, I think a lot of times as pre-meds, we're like, oh, well, this is what they did, so I want to do that. But it's not about that. It's about finding what's important to you. What is something you're really passionate about, that you care about? And then those are the things that you want to invest your time and your, again, passion into, because that's what's going to shine through in your application.
Another personal question. How did you start building habits and study skills? And I guess I want to add on to that. Can you talk a bit about like the rigor difference between undergraduate and medical school?
Oof. Okay. So for the building the study habits, I really did kind of have to start from the ground up. Like I said, I was not doing that well those first few years at school. Um, I didn't really talk about this, but I hadn't taken a math class since junior year of high school, and I was really, really weak in math. That was one of the areas that I was just the most nervous about and kind of felt like it was something that I just couldn't do. So I started off at the bottom. I started off taking the pre-algebra course and then built my, slowly built it up through community college. The same thing with some of the classes I was taking. I started with the intro to biology course because I wasn't sure how I was going to do in the other bio classes and started building it up from there. So I think it's important to kind of look at, what are some of the areas that you feel a little bit nervous about and see where can I start off with those? How can I take this one step at a time? And then naturally, as you go through your, academic journey, you're going to progress. You're going to be able to, I always think of it like you have little hooks in your brain and you have to build a good foundation with some of those, intro level courses. And then you're just kind of building off of that. And that's what's going to help you learn. So I think for me, it was really helpful to start slow and just kind of take it one step at a time, focus on understanding this concept. And then later, once you have that down, you'll be able to build upon it. And as you progress through your school, you will just continue to build upon it. And as for the academic differences between undergraduate and medical school, it's tough because I'm right in the middle of it. And it's definitely medical school is tough. It's I wouldn't say that the content itself is so difficult, but I think just the timing of it is what's really, really tricky. So we always joke that, they'll cover your entire undergraduate degree in 1 week in medical school, which sometimes can be a little bit true. Maybe not an entire degree, but they'll definitely cover an entire class in 2 weeks, which can be just a lot of information. So I think it's important though, again, once you get to the medical school level, you've taken so many classes, you have worked so hard and learned so much that you really do have such a solid foundation to kind of connect this information to. And then also, now that I'm in my second year, the first year is a lot of normal physiology. So I had to learn a lot of physiology then, and now we are learning about disease processes and how the different medications for different disease states. But then I'm also working with patients, so I get to apply that knowledge to patients that I'm working with. And that's just another helpful way to reinforce everything. But medical school is tough. I would say it's nice because you're really focusing on what you're super interested in. Whereas in undergrad, a lot of it is I'm taking a calculus class and I'm not super interested in calculus, but now you're really just learning about the human body and about all the things that can go wrong and how you can fix it.
I want to know how many volunteer work hours did you have before you applied to medical school?
It definitely depended. So, let's see. For work hours itself, at that point, I had been working full time. I was able to put in my projected hours as well. So I'd been working full time for a year. I think I calculated that it was over 1,000 hours of clinical experience when I was applying. And then I think I had like another 8 hours, 800 hours coming along on the way. So that was a full year of working. And that definitely did help me. Trying to think. I know for volunteering I'd volunteered at the free clinic and I probably had about 150-ish hours for that one. I had been volunteering with PreMedCC for a year and was pretty involved that first year and second year. And I probably said I had done about 400-ish hours. Um, but yeah, so I think it kind of depends, if you can start getting involved with something early at the city college, then it's nice because you can kind of, maybe do something on the weekend for 4 hours, 2 hour, just do a half shift on a Saturday. And those hours really do start collecting. I would recommend taking a spreadsheet, like a Google spreadsheet, and just start putting in your hours and start keeping track of that because you're definitely going to need it for for the application cycle itself. And then again, that's part of why I think taking a gap year is really beneficial because it does give you a full year to just focus on strengthening your application and collecting those hours. And then if you're working, you can also be getting paid for that. So that's helpful to have a little bit of a cushion between school make a little bit of money, and then being able to apply to medical school.
They want to know, were you involved in any clubs? How did you feel? How do you feel made you stand out? This person says, I feel like with my job, I don't have time to join clubs.
Yeah, that's tricky. I was involved with some clubs at this city college level. Um, I was involved in the biology club, was the big one. I was president of that for a year. And then I was also involved in the pre-med club, which I don't even think I ended up putting on my application just because I was a secretary role. We only had meetings. At the time, it wasn't super active. I know that Santa Barbara City College has done a lot with their pre-med club lately. But I think getting involved in clubs is good because it allows you to meet people and to meet people that, maybe to make study friends and meet people that are interested in what you're interested in and some of the things that you're looking to do. And then also, um, again, it's a good way to connect with other people, and to connect with some of the faculty that are helping run those clubs. I don't know if it's 100%. Um, that's something that can look good on applications too. I would recommend, if you are able to possibly look into working in a clinical type role, just because then those hours are something that you can be putting on your application as well. But I know that that's not always possible for everyone, depending on your circumstances and what you're at. Um, but yeah, I don't know if clubs, especially if you're not looking for a leadership position, I don't know if they're super necessary, but I do think it is nice to kind of have that community and to meet people that are interested in the things you are.
But also make sure, like, you could put working as part of your experience, even if it's not health related or medical related. That's, if you're spending time into that, then definitely, and I don't know what you do, but definitely put that in there. Obviously, if it's health related, great, but if not, that's okay too. At the end of the day, like, you have to um put food in your stomach and roof over your head. So,
And it
uh,
shows dedication and commitment too,
yeah.
and responsibility. So those are all things that their schools are looking for.
Um, Person is, I'm a community college counselor and I've helped students transfer into pre-med majors for many years. My question is, how important is the medical schools that students have a BS in a pre-med major? I understand med schools are okay with any major as long as your prereqs are completed, but are you a strong applicant with a pre-med major?
That's a good question. I think for the student themselves, if they are a BS major, it can be a little bit more helpful to get the prerequisites. Just because you have to get those prerequisites regardless of your major. So medical schools, I have some friends that have majored in English. I have friends that have majored in anthropology that were BA degrees. And for them, they said it was a little stressful just because they were having to take their major requirements on top of the pre-med requirements. So that's where it can start to be a little bit difficult just on the student side of thing. But as for if they're really passionate and they want to major in what they're interested in and they think, and they have the time and the ability to take the pre-med requisite courses as well, then that's completely fine. It's not going to change anything about the admission committee. I would just say for the student themselves, they have to understand that that might mean a little bit of additional coursework and maybe some difficult additional coursework if they're taking, say a English degree, but then they're also having to take organic chemistry and physics and calculus and all of these classes. That would be the only difficulty. But as for admissions themselves, would not make a difference at all. In fact, I've heard that they even like seeing students that come from humanities or BA backgrounds because it shows, to actually be able to balance that difficult science heavy pre-med requisite coursework with their major coursework is pretty impressive. Um, so yeah, I think it really does depend on the student. And if they're super passionate about their major and they're really interested in something that they really want to do and they're able to balance the pre-med coursework, prerequisite coursework, then, more power to them.
Yeah, and this is actually a great question tomorrow we'll have the dean of admissions from UC Irvine School of Medicine. To them, your major doesn't really make a difference. But first, there's no such thing as a pre-med major. There's pre-med require prerequisites, but but since you're taking the 2 years of bio, the year and a half of bio, organic chemistry, so all those classes you need to take, you're more likely to major in bio because then you could take your upper division genetics and biochem and other classes. It's just easier to be in that major. But if you're passionate about being an English major, then more the merrier. Um, but this is actually a great question to ask the deans of admission tomorrow that we have. And most of them that we've had, like your major only matters if you do bad. So let's say, you double major in bioengineering and electrical engineering, and your GPA is not as well as if you just majored in bio or physiology or something like that, or even like history major. The other part of it too, if you're a humanities major, then you're a stronger humanities student, but you still need to do well in your prereqs. So it's kind of like, you know, but you also want to like major in something you enjoy. Like, gosh, like I started being a bioengineering major, and after taking a bunch of like physics and math classes, I was like, nope. And then I started looking at some of the engineering courses, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really interested in any of that stuff. Um, so yeah, people have to major in what they want to do, what you want to do. Um, so this is a question. Knowing that med schools can be heavy loaded, how can one still prioritize mental health while still keeping up with the workload?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that I think my school definitely, is a conversation that we have because med school it can be tough. It can feel a little bit like that's all you have time for. Um, and, I know a lot of us struggle with feeling, a little bit of imposter syndrome and feeling like all we are is med students. So I think it really is important to have a good routine. Um, to give yourself a break too. I know I've heard people say treat medical school like it's a job, study as hard as you can during the day, but then once it hits 7 o'clock, turn it off. Take some time for yourself. I don't necessarily always do that. I know sometimes I can procrastinate a little bit and then I'm studying late into the night, which is pretty common for med students, unfortunately. But I think having a good support system is really important. Reaching out to people, making friends with your classmates. I have my husband, which has been wonderful, just to have somebody to kind of step away from medical school with and just feel like myself again. But it's a really important conversation. I think schools are talking about it a lot more and they're trying to create wellness committees and different activities to get people to have fun. I've spoken with my counselor about it, not my academic counselor. We have associate deans who are practicing physicians, and we have meetings with them once a month. And that's, wellness has come up, and how do you maintain mental health in medical school because it can feel very overwhelming. But I think it's important not to not lose yourself in it, to really set boundaries, say, I'm going to have Saturdays off and I'm not going to study that day. I'm going to have fun, but also to understand that sometimes things might have to change. So it's tricky. I think it's something that medicine in general, we're still trying to find how to balance that workload. But looking for the joy in it. For me, especially this year, getting to work with patients has been just an incredible sense of joy and kind of a reminder that all of this studying is actually going to pay off in the end, into something that's really happy and brings me a lot of joy. And I know I keep saying joy, but it's important. You have to really just kind of find what's important for you. Don't lose yourself in school. Have hobbies, have things outside of being a medical student to go back to. And that helps a lot.
What would you recommend for non-traditional students who don't have a pre-med advisor?
That's a good question. I didn't have a pre-med advisor now that I think about it. I think at UCLA they probably had one, but I didn't have a chance to chat with them. I would recommend it depends on where you're at in your non-traditional journey. I would assume, if you are done with school and maybe you're taking a post-bac program, I would reach out to the post-bac office to see if they have any advising available. I think PreMedCC honestly is a really good resource because we have deans of admissions coming in and saying what they're looking for. You have an option to ask questions. Um, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, there are some pre-med advisors online. I don't know if I would recommend that. Personally, I think there's a lot of really good free resources out there. Pre-med CC being one of them, and then looking at, the schools, a lot of times we'll have the deans of admissions, but then also the schools themselves will also be putting on webinars where you can get information from the advisors. But if you're a non-traditional student who's still enrolled in school, I think, looking through the resources that your school offers would be really important. A lot of community colleges have college counselors or career counselors and people that you can talk to that maybe aren't a formal pre-med advisor, but they can still give you advice and give you a little bit of clarification on what schools are looking for and what you can do to strengthen your application.
Yeah, if you're at a community college, there is MESA programs. There is also MESA programs are at all community colleges now in California. I'm not sure about the rest of the country, but the other part of it too is the reason why we kind of started this organization was for that reason. So we have all of deans of admission that come, I think we have something like 30 some odd events a semester, and each of them are focused into certain things. And this is the best time for you to come and ask him because we usually take your questions and ask him directly. Also, I think your counselors can provide you resources for transferring and other stuff and which courses to take. And then the other part of it too, your faculty, all of your community college faculty minimum have a master's degree. And so if you're taking OChem, general chem bio, more likely than not, they know people that have gone through this process and have network. Like I know like one of my OChem professors told me, oh, my wife is a doctor, and if they knew that I was pre-med, and if do you want to like talk to her, or do you want any resources that she could provide for you? So those are all like available to you. Um, but I would just say like just be careful because there's a lot of people online that are charging, and all this information is out there and it's free. We have thousands of hours of things that you could go look at as well. So I would just say don't like I don't know. I personally wouldn't, but also I'm also pretty cheap. So
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to be paying a lot of money. And the very first person that I told that I wanted to be pre-med was my biology professor at Santa Barbara City College. And he said, okay, just print out your transcript and bring it in and we'll go through it together. And I think that's a really good, if you have professors that you trust and that, and like Juben was saying, bio, OChem, physics, chemistry, a lot of them are going to have experience with pre-med students and they can look through your transcript with you if you want more personalized advice without you having to pay somebody online. Just, if they're charging like $500. It's crazy. You don't have to do that. There's resources.
Thank you. For volunteer activities, is it better to keep your interests narrow or to spread out in different areas?
That's a really good question. I think when I was applying to medical school, some of the advice that I had heard was to try to have an application that makes sense. That, a lot of my volunteer activities were pretty varied. I was volunteering with free food distribution. I was free clinic, working with children at, when I was, and then working with pre-med CC. So like all of those kind of seem different, but then I was able to put them together into a story about me wanting to, help out my community and to look for different ways that I could help that maybe don't make sense. But a lot of it was just very compassion based. So I would say that you don't have to be super narrow where you're only doing 1 or 2 different activities. Although doing something like that does give you a lot of hours, it gives you a lot of experience in those what you're focusing on. But I would say you don't want what we hear from deans of admissions is they don't want it to look like you're checking off a checkbox. They do want to see kind of a cohesive story connecting all of these things. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky. I would say that you don't want to be so wide that it just kind of seems like these random activities that you're doing, but you want them to kind of connect in one central, maybe a central value that's really important to you, and to show that. You'll have an opportunity to kind of explain that too. So you'll have, when you're applying to school, you'll be typing about a paragraph worth of information about why you did this experience and what it meant to you. And then you'll be able to say, kind of explain like, oh, this is, this was important to me because of this. And then you can kind of tie that in other spots in your application. So I would say don't go super, super wide, but at the same time, if there's a central theme and a central value to all of those, then it's fine. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of tricky to explain.
The other thing that I would just add is there's 168 hours in a week, and for you to function as a normal human being, you have to sleep about 40 hours of it. And so and then if you're going to school and having to work, so you have very limited. And it's okay to try different things. Let's say you're like, okay, everybody says that you have to go volunteer in the ER. And so you decide to go volunteer in the ER. And that's just something that you don't like at all. Like, you don't like the noise, you don't like all the blood and all of the other stuff. Then you go volunteer at a senior center, and you really like that, and you kind of focus on that. And if you say, you put, I don't know, 75 hours of doing that, but you really haven't done any, like, you could say, I volunteered for 100 hours at a senior center, and I put together, I don't know, a senior dance or whatever that you like doing and you developed doing with that time, but just showing up for 4 hours a week, that's not really. So, and you want to do the things that you enjoy. Like, don't volunteer doing things you don't enjoy. Like, if you like animals, go volunteer at an animal shelter. And even though that's not hospital related, that shows some sort of commitment, because animals play a huge part in the mental health of people. And so, and, we even have, like, in the hospital, we have we have these specially trained animals that come, and we get to pet them and we feel good. So, but
They
just
bring
do
them
the things that you enjoy.
too.
Huh?
They bring them to medical students too.
Yeah, I love when they do that, because you're like, okay, I could go play with the dog. So, but yeah,
Yeah, it's all about what you really care about and what makes you happy and what you're passionate about. And that's going to come through in your application. So do what, you have to spend time doing it. So do something that you enjoy.
What were the exact prerequisite courses you took at community college? And how would someone know exactly what pre-med courses to take?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think again, it was the biology, undergraduate biology coursework, chemistry, organic chemistry with lab, and regular chemistry with lab, physics with lab, calculus, statistics. And then some schools, or I think most schools have an English class requirement, but then some schools require sociology and psychology. So those were also classes I took. The only ones I didn't take that a lot of schools require are biochemistry and genetics, but again, every school is different. So to find out which classes you need to take, again, the MSAR, the Medical School Admissions Requirement website, is really helpful. You do have to pay for that one, but you can get free fee assistance. The AMC fee assistance will cover that. But you can also, the MSAR is nice just because it has everything in one cohesive place. It also gives information about like GPA averages, their MCAT averages, some of the specific requirements for the school itself. But you can also look on schools' websites. A lot of times they'll have listed what their requirements are. If you look at enough of them, you'll see that there's some pretty common requirements. Again, just those full bio, full chemistry, full physics. The math requirements kind of vary and the like humanities requirements vary. And again, the biochem and genetics also varies. But that's a little bit tricky. I would say that if you are a bio major, then most of those classes are going to be part of your required coursework to begin with, except for some of the humanities classes. So for now, at the point that you're at, I would recommend looking at the schools that you're really interested in and just making sure that you have all the requirements for those specific schools. And if as long as, maybe look at 5 schools, 5 medical schools that you want to go to. And I have a feeling there will be a lot of overlap between the schools, and that will give you a pretty good place to start. And then as you get farther into the application cycle, you can look a little bit more closely to see, oh, could I use this for this class? Or maybe I'm thinking about this school now. I could add on this course. I'm gonna grab my charger really quickly. Sorry, guys. I came downstairs and I don't have my charger with me, so I'll be right back.
So this is a couple of questions. Somebody asked about undocumented. A couple of people have asked about undocumented students, and I would just say that the people that are experts, and we always um, send people to pre-health dreamers, and I put an email and contact information in there. Just you Google pre-health dreamers or just pre-health phdreamers.org, and they're a great resource for undocumented students. Just because it's a really complex thing, and with a lot of the changes that are happening, um, I would definitely contact them, and they can definitely um, give you more information on that. And then the other thing is that I would just add to about your courses at a community college is make sure you look at courses like bio and chemistry courses that are for majors. And it specifically says that in the course description. A second part is asking your counselors and advisors. And then the other one that I found also is some of the instructors just say, hey, I'm a, go to their office hours and say, I'm a pre-med major. What courses should I take? And they will tell you that. If you're at a community college and you don't know what a MSAR is yet. The other website that is also helpful is assist.org. Um, and this is another one that if you want to transfer, this is a really great website as well that you could look at the majors that you want to transfer to.
Yeah, it's very helpful when you're planning your transferring. It really makes a difference.
Do you want to go next, Michael?
Yeah. So somebody asks, I'm currently a pre-med major and my advisor suggests that I take the pre-physician assistant route to get ahead. And I was wondering if my plan is to go to med school, would it be cheaper to stay the pre-med route and take the prereqs there at my community college or at a four-year school if I really don't want to do the pre-physician assistant route?
That's an interesting question. So, sorry, I want to make sure I understand. Their advisor is suggesting that they take a pre-PA major?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, I would just say that you decide what you want to do and not what an advisor tells you to do. So if you want to go to medical school, go to medical school. Now, the nice thing is the prereqs for pre-med and pre-PA are very identical at community college. The only thing is that for pre-med major, you don't need to take anatomy and physiology, whereas for pre-PA, you do. And definitely know what the difference between a physician assistant and a physician are, because the scope of practice and length are very different. Um, and so make sure you're fully aware of that as well. But that's just the only thing I would just say.
I didn't even realize there were pre-PA majors at schools. That's
There's
interesting.
no, yeah, there's no pre-PA major. It's kind of like the whole same
Oh,
thing.
the root.
Pre-med, yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, most PA programs require you to have a year of anatomy and physiology. Um, and and whereas pre-med you don't.
Mhm.
One of the other questions is, what factors influence you to attend the program you're in now?
Yeah, so when I was getting ready to apply to schools, I really wanted, I kind of did some research on what schools were, they consider places, we'll call it mission driven, where, again, emphasizing community service, emphasizing volunteering, working with people from diverse backgrounds, just service driven. Um, so that was kind of what shaped my application. And that was the schools that I selected, that was what I was really looking for, was schools that gave back a lot to their community and to people that needed help. So Rochester came up on those lists, and I really liked they have something called the biopsychosocial model, which is emphasizing kind of the intersection of humanities, how somebody's, when we're looking at disease, we don't look just at their physical biology and medical aspects of the what's going on with them, but to really kind of consider their social habits, their social environment, the places they grew up in, the relationships they have with people around them, and kind of use that to factor into your treatment of that patient. So, I've always been passionate about health humanities, and I feel like my school really, we spend a lot of time going over humanities and ethics and bioethics. So that was something that I was really drawn to. And the people are just wonderful. So that's also nice. And also, it is farther. That is the one thing that, I moved across the country to go to medical school, and that's pretty common. I have a lot of classmates who are from California and are from far away. And that's something when you're applying to medical school, I think can be a little bit tricky to understand. But it can be hard to stay, to have one specific state that you want to be tied down to, especially now that I'm in my second year and, we start thinking about residency. That's another chance where it's, there's not a lot of say in where you're going to go. You just apply to the programs that you're interested in and that have people that and the values match up with you. And then you kind of see where it goes. So I'm really happy where I'm at. And I think with residency, I'm going to go through this whole cycle again where you just don't know where you're going to end up. But yeah, that's it. I really love my school, and it's been a great experience.
This person wants to know, do you think medical assisting experience will help you on your application?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a lot of my classmates did assistant. I had a lot of the medical assistants at the practices I worked as a histotech at are now applying to medical school. So it definitely looks really good. It gives you experience with patients. Again, you get paid to do it, so that's nice. You learn to start getting a little bit of a history from patients. You learn to take vitals, and you're really part of the care team. So I would say that being a medical assistant is a really good experience to get involved with. Yeah. As a medical student, sometimes it kind of feels like we do a lot of medical assistant jobs as well, because we're taking patients in, we're doing vitals, we're doing, getting the beginning of the history, and presenting to the physician. So there's a lot of overlap, and you'll build some really good skills.
Um, this is a question. People want to know, is research mandatory for being admitted into medical schools? And were any of your classmates admitted without research?
Yeah, so I mean, I had very minimal research. I will say COVID was definitely a factor in me having little research experience, just because of the timing as when I transferred. It's something that I've talked about before. Um, So I don't know how it is now. Now that there are more research opportunities available, I would say that it's difficult because schools are looking for, they want to see that you have a level of scientific inquiry, that you're able to ask research questions and able to kind of formulate a research thought or process and then present on it. A lot of this, we talked about soft skills earlier, but you do get a lot of soft skills through presenting your research by doing poster presentations, answering questions, being able to think critically. It's like, oh, this experiment didn't work. What could have gone wrong? How can I troubleshoot? So there are some really good skills in there. But I would also say that research doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional, what we think of as like wet lab, where you're, doing experiments all day. You can also be doing research in other ways. So I did some humanities research for my capstone project in society and genetics, and that was a little bit, I didn't realize when I was applying to medical school because I was so focused on research has to be this way and this way, but humanities research is also a big part of medicine and bioethics and learning how to do even chart reviews and different, a lot of times when you're and as a physician doing research, a lot of it is case reports, chart reviews, things like that. So it's tricky because I do think research is important, but I also think if you can try to get some experience getting in a lab, I would say start early, especially if you're a community college student. See if there's any opportunities on your campus. See if your faculty, your professors know of any opportunities, maybe at nearby campuses. And then as soon as you transfer, I would say start, emailing some professors day one when you're at your university to see if you can get into a lab. And then also you could do clinical research at nearby hospitals as well and start looking for opportunities there. A lot of hospitals have clinical research teams and you can work as an assistant in those teams.
They want to know, is it better to finish med school requirements at community college or when you transfer to four-year university?
It's tough. I would say when you're transferring to four-year university, again, it depends on the major that you're in. Personally, I would say that if you are at a good community college where you feel like you know your professors, you feel like you're able to make connections with people, and I would say there's no harm in getting those classes done then. I'm not going to say that they're easier or harder. I do think that I personally benefited from being in a smaller classroom, whereas once you transfer to university, those pre-med requirements are typically going to be lower division courses, which can be really, really big classes. So you can be in a classroom with 300 people. And I just knew that that wasn't the environment that was best for me. I preferred to be able to speak to my professors and ask questions and go to office hours and not feel like I was just sitting in another lecture hall, not having a chance to ask anything. So I definitely feel like my taking the classes at the community college prepared me well because I was able to go to UCLA and do well in all my classes and, be successful at the upper division level. So I had the knowledge that I needed and had gotten that from the community college. But again, it was just that it felt like a more supportive environment for me personally, just to be in a smaller group instead of having, 300 to 400 other undergrads in a giant lecture hall. So I think it depends on you, but if you can take them at your community college, I would recommend doing that.
If you're at a community college, finish all of them at community college just because they're better. I think the quality is that most community college professors are at community college because they like teaching, they enjoy teaching. They don't have to do any research, they don't have any other responsibilities, and they're really good at teaching the material. Second, it's cheaper. I mean, it's what, $46 a unit versus a couple few hundreds. So I think from an economic aspect of it, the other part of it too, if you could live at home and not pay rent, do that. And then, so these are all of those things that to look at it. And you could come and ask the dean of admission tomorrow.
Mhm.
Um,
There's one thing I wanted to mention too. I didn't have any interviewers at all ask me. They asked about PreMedCC, so they knew I'd gone to a community college and it was on my transcript, but none of them asked anything about, if I thought it was prepared me or if I thought it was harder, but that never came up. The only time that we talked about me having gone to a community college was when we were talking about how I was using that to talk to other community college students and help them on the path to medicine. Like it's not a problem. They really don't look at that coursework and think anything differently of it.
Yeah. And you could come and ask the Dean of Admission from UCI tomorrow. It's that, you know, um, how do you support yourself while completing your prereqs for medical schools? I know it's a long journey and it requires a lot of time and activities, and med school is expensive. And I'm wondering if you work part-time or receive scholarships.
Yeah, so during when I was at community college, I lived at home. So that did help I didn't have to pay for rent. So that was an immense help. That really did help me a lot. I did also work part-time. I was working as a tutor. And I was working as a tutor for 3 different classes. So that was really helpful. I was also working as a lab assistant for the animal biology lab, or just kind of like helping setting up biology lab stuff. So I did a lot of on-campus work to help support myself. And then also I was living at home. So I mean that really was the thing that helped the most. And that was really nice. As for transferring and for medical school, I am completely living on loans. As are most medical students, it's really that is kind of the unfortunate reality. But once you get to medical school, it's very likely that you're going to finish medical school. Not a lot of people, once you're in the programs, they don't want you to leave. And at that point, you're worked so hard that you don't want to leave either. So it's pretty much guaranteed that it'll work out. The loans will, you collect them, but then you go into a pretty high paying profession and you'll be able to pay them off. Eventually, there's also loan forgiveness programs. So if you work for, I believe it's, I'm not sure, is it 5 to 10 years at a federally qualified health center? I think it's 5 years, but I might be incorrect. But there's certain health centers where you can work at, and then your loans will be forgiven. So that's also something that I'm looking into. So yeah, I think it's unfortunate. Being a pre-med is really, really tough. Having a job is really helpful. And again, being able to live at home can make a big difference if you're able to do that. And then as for university and for medical school, there are, it's kind of an unfortunate part of it, but most of us do go into debt for it. So, but it'll all work out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of reasons not to go to medical school. One of them should not be money because you'll make enough when you're done. There's also like programs, there's also groups like Kaiser and some of the larger ones that have loan repayment programs or sign-on bonuses. So, and you always have a job. So, and then I put a bunch of lists for National Health Service Corps military, and then there's also a list of various programs that you could do. Um, um, so somebody wants to know, they are a transfer student of their first quarter and they figured out they want to go pre-med. Um, they want to know what they should do now. So they were not pre-med when they were at community college. Now they are after they transferred. What should they do? Um,
I would say talk to your counselor ASAP. That's going to be your first. I would talk to your major counselor just because a lot of times they're a little bit easier to get in to see than the pre-health pre-med counselor. So first, if you can make an appointment with your major's counselor to see where you're at, what classes you need. It's tricky because we don't know specifically what classes you've taken, but you definitely want to go to an expert in this and they'll be able to help you out a lot. I will say it's not impossible. I have friends in med school who were university students who decided to go pre-med, in their 3rd year, which is where you're at, and it's doable. But you're definitely going to want to get going. I would make that appointment before you leave this webinar.
yeah, and a couple of things I would also look at too is talk to your advisor, your major advisor, Because if you need to take prereqs and you have to change your major, it's also going to impact your financial aid and a bunch of other things. And also, some of the UCs have limits on how much time you could spend there. So definitely talk to them. That's like a more complicated discussion that we can't really answer because like we don't have anything in front of us. So this person wants to ask you a personal question, and many people in med school have spoken about how they've lost their relationships or get disconnected from their families, relatives, and lovers during medical school. What what do you think about this, and how do you balance your personal life and med school? I would just add this is that, um, and this is since I know Madeline is the person you find is more important than anything else, I would say, than than that. And knowing her significant other is a wonderful guy, and that supports her. So I think that's the most first important one. Then we might just ask, how can we? Never mind. I think that
I
should be the question. How do you find someone like Spencer?
yeah. Well, yeah.
Because I'm
I met
still
my
looking,
community college. That's the place to no. Um, I would say that this is actually really common. And in first year, I have seen so many of my classmates break up. Not my classmates themselves, but if they have significant others back home, especially if they're doing long distance, that's really, really tricky. And med school is all consuming. It takes up a lot of your time. I mean, gosh, today I've, maybe spent an hour and a half with Spencer just because today was a particularly long day. But I would say you do want to invest time. Your relationship is really, really important. Your friendships, your, relationships with your family, with your friends, with your partner, they're all really important. And it's about being conscious of that time and about setting time aside specifically for that. And that was something when I first started med school, I spoke again, I think I mentioned I spoke to my academic dean, who is almost like a counselor, and told him, this is my plan. I'm going to have dinner with my husband, or at the time fiance, every night. I'm going to set time aside on the weekends to spend time, just the two of us. I'm not going to study. Like, this time is off limits. And honestly, just scheduling in time is so important. And then also knowing that med school, it's tough for the medical student, but it's also really tough for the partner. And to keep that in mind too, that you're both in this together and it's isolating for both of you. So yeah, I think it's important. Just, your relationships need to be a priority and you need to really set time aside for them. And you can't just take that for granted.
Um, yeah, so you should probably talk to us about how to find someone like Spencer.
Yes.
Um, this is another question. Did you apply to many med schools that did not accept your pre-med prereqs from community college?
No, every school that I applied to accepted them. I mean, they didn't accept me, all of them, but they none of them like said that this didn't apply for their requirements. There's something as they verify your coursework, you can see if every school, like if they accept the coursework, if it works for their matriculation. So not a single, I didn't have any schools that said this doesn't count for our major and you can't come. Yeah, yeah.
So this is two more questions. What are some good experiences where you can show your leadership skills aside from clubs?
That's a great question. I think volunteering is one where you can show your leadership skills. You can take on maybe a project. It doesn't have to be that you need to be promoted to the top volunteer, but you can, offer to lead a project, offer to, put on an event or to be involved in the leadership in an event. You can show it through working as well. Again, just looking for opportunities where it's like, this is something that needs to be done in our job or in our volunteer experience or this environment. And this is, you can find something that, would be a good project and offer to lead it and offer to start it. And then that's something that schools love to see. It shows initiative, it shows leadership, it shows that you're organized and you're able to kind of bring things together and make something happen. So I would say that would be a good place to look.
I would just say leadership is the ability to influence others to work together to achieve a common goal. So that could be anything. That could be hundreds of things. That could be working on a political campaign. That could be, uh, one of my favorite volunteer things that I do, it has nothing to do with, is I teach citizenship classes, love that. That's probably my favorite thing to do. And then get to go and see people get sworn in. That's kind of like awesome. Um, and so that's probably like my favorite thing to do in the world. Um, but there's hundreds of things you could do. Leadership, and one of my personal philosophies is leadership is not something you got to get off the couch and do it, and it's trial by error. You're gonna fail as much time as you're gonna succeed, and that's okay. But it's not on your couch, and it's not an innate ability. It's not like being able to run like the 100-meter dash at 10 seconds. Those people have innate ability. But yeah. Um, our patient care hours look differently if they're paid versus unpaid?
I would say no. I think, if they're paid because you have a job, depending if you're working full time or not, it's nice because you are going to be able to get more hours that way. So if you're taking a gap year or maybe you're working during the summer, you're just going to be able to work more and get more hours. So that'll look good. I think having more hours in general is a good thing. But as for if they're considered differently, I don't think schools would really put them in two different categories.
Yeah, I would just say that healthcare is probably one of the most regulated things in this country. And so for you to have any kind of responsibility, you're gonna first have to be certified. Some places you could work without being certified. That just means that that risk and liability is taken on by the entity. And so if you're able to do that, then they're gonna have to pay you in order to have you, you know, um, have some sort of responsibility. Going up to the ER and volunteering, that's not like clinical experience because you're really not doing that much in terms of like besides like handing out blankets and um, handing out blankets or doing those types of things. A couple of people are asking about should they go to nursing school first and then transfer to medical school? Um,
That's
do
an
you want
interesting
to?
question. Yeah, I mean, I'm not the expert in this. I know, have we had nursing to med school talks before?
Yeah, I would just say the big challenge is that we've had a couple of nurses that have come and talked that are in medical school. The only challenge is don't go to nursing school as a route to medical school because none of your classes are going to transfer. You're going to have to take a different set of bio and chemistry classes. And then other part of it too is that if you go through nursing school, if you're, are you're pre whatever, pre prerequisites, just do the med school route just because that's a pretty long route as it is. And so put all your eggs in that one basket. Um, because if you even go through nursing school and you graduate, being a nurse is not like an easy job. Like for you to get hired, at least your first year, that employer is going to put you through a lot of like training and teaching. So you're not going to be able to take OChem on the side and then you're going to have to take all of these other classes while you're working, and it's just really hard. There are people that have done it. Like we've had a couple of nurses that have done it, but they realized they wanted to do medicine while they were working as nurses versus as, trying to preset that part of it. But we've had a couple of nurses that have come in, former nurses that are medical students, but if you want to do it today, if you say you want to go to medical school, then just, you know, do it. And
Yeah,
some people want
I've,
to know, yeah. And then
I've
if
had
you're,
classmates that were nurses, and it's the same thing. They realized when they were on the job that
yeah,
they wanted to go back to and then they had to give up, a pretty high paying job and go back to taking, classes and now being unpaid and working for free in the hospital as a medical student. So
Yeah, it's just challenging. So if you decided to do it as a in your pre-rec classes, then just do your pre-med classes and go to medical school. But if you're a nurse or if you're practicing, yeah, it's possible. I mean, there's a lot of connections that you have in terms of like being able to find mentors and also, but it's just really tough. Like we had a couple of people that were nurses and they said like it was basically a 10-year detour. So it's just adding a 10 years because nursing school is 4 to 5 years and most nursing programs are, you need to have a bachelor's degree to get hired, in most states. So it's just, I would just say, and the classes are not the same. Like pre-PA and pre-med, the prereqs are pretty closely aligned. Like you need to have the organic and stuff, um, but actually, and then if your career, some people were to ask about, um, um, they want to know, if you're a career changer, what about post-bac? Um, and do you want to talk about that?
yeah, so I didn't have a full career change just because at first I was considering teaching. I was doing, my application looked like teacher. It was working in schools, liberal arts major, looking for, I was considering a teaching degree. And then I pivoted. So it did take me longer to get through undergrad because of that pivot. I would say that a post-bac course, if you're already in the career, is definitely something that you're going to want to look into. There's some really good programs. I know we've covered post-bac programs before and some of the different, how you can find one that works for you, how you can create your own post-bac program as well using community colleges. So it's definitely doable. And I would say that it's probably just if you still need to get those prereqs, it's something. But I also want to just, it's tough to change roles. We have somebody in my med school who was a lawyer and then decided to go to medicine and had to take all these post-bac classes as well. So it's really admirable and it really, you will give a lot back to your school and to your community and your patients. So it's a great thing to do. But yeah, I think as for the specifics of how to do a post-bac program, do it yourself or how to find one that works for you, I would recommend looking on the PreMedCC website, YouTube, and kind of look up post-bac programs. And I know we have a lot of resources there.
Yeah, and next Saturday we're gonna have the director of the UC Davis post-bac program, Dr. Campa. She's gonna talk about interviews, but if you come and ask her questions about post-bac, she'll talk about it as well. Anyways, Miss Babb, we're gonna have to let you go.
Babby
Um,
Cola.
huh?
Hyphenated. I'm Babby Cola now.
Bad what?
Bab E. Cola.
Oh, that's right. Huh?
Yeah.
You haven't? Have you? Is it officially changed?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for coming tonight.
Absolutely. I'm always
Making
so
time.
happy to.
Actually, I have to go to work. So, um, but thank you again for coming, and it was great seeing you. And say hi to your better half for me.
Will do.
And all
And
right,
I'd love to, talk with you all again, sometime maybe in the spring with a little bit more information about like what med school itself looks like. I feel like that could be a fun little
talk
chat.
talk about boards, post boards.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'll be in dedicated for step one. So
All right.
that'll,
Well, thank you again, everyone. Sorry we
uh,
couldn't get to all the questions, but hopefully we try to answer as many as we can. Come tomorrow, we have the Dean of Admission from UCI School of Medicine.